our very old school ways of making fire, I'm going to show you how to make a fire using flint and steel. Now, using flint and steel to make a fire is probably my least favorite method. If I was stuck out in the woods, would I rather have matches or a lighter or a fire steel? Absolutely, 100%. So I always recommend don't teach people flint and steel until you've taught them those other methods. Remember, we're trying to teach people skills that can save their life in a certain situation, not just cool historical tricks to make a fire. Now, having said that, people made fire with flint and steel successfully for hundreds of years. So it is a proven method, and for that reason I think it's worth learning about for sure. But is it my top choice for making a fire out in the wilderness? No, definitely not. The prime reason for that, it takes a lot of prep time ahead of time. So if you get stuck in the wilderness unexpectedly and you haven't prepared all these materials and have them with you, there's no way you're going to be able to do this method of fire making. So what materials do we need for flint and steel? Well, we need, first of all, the flint and steel. So it's called flint and steel, but there's lots of different rocks that will work for this. You can use flint, you can use chert, you can use quartz. Basically, you can use any rock that can make a fairly sharp edge on the side, and that's going to be strong enough and hard enough to pull tiny little, almost microscopic flecks off of our steel striker. So basically, when you do flint and steel, you're hitting the rock with the steel striker with a lot of force, kind of a glancing blow, and you're making tiny little sparks. What's really going on, the rock is actually shaving off tiny little fragments of metal, and it shaves them off so quickly with so much friction that they basically ignite, causing hot little sparks. Now, the sparks that you get from flint and steel are nowhere near close to the temperature and the strength of sparks that you get from a fire steel. So that's why you can't use flint and steel to light normal tinder like you would with a fire steel. You need special tinder, and for that we kind of have to make that ahead of time. The tinder that we're going to use is something called char cloth. So the other thing that you need for flint and steel is char cloth, or a way to make the char cloth. So you'll need some type of tin. This is just a candy tin here, but you can use shoe polish tin, mint tin, whatever it is. But if you take a look, the top of that tin has one tiny little hole poked in it because you want your tin not to be totally airtight. You want a way for air to escape. So basically, we're going to put cotton fabric. This is cut up parts of an old pair of jeans. You want to use any natural fabric, so cotton, hemp, whatever it is, as long as it's a totally natural fabric. And basically, we're going to cook this fabric inside the tin. We're not going to burn it up, obviously, but we're basically just going to cook it until it's charred. And then that charred fabric will take a spark from our flint and steel very easily, and that's going to be what we use as the ember to then put into our tinder bundle to make a fire. So let me show you how to turn this fabric into char cloth. Ironically, to make char cloth, you need to start out with a fire first. So we have our tin here that has the hole punched in the top. We have 4 cut out pieces of jean material that we're going to use. Let me get away from the smoke. Woo! And you want to make sure that your material is cut to fit single layer inside the tin, but you don't need to do one at a time. I'm going to stack up 4. You don't want to pack your tin full, because that's going to basically, you need oxygen to char this cloth. So if you fill up the tin, you won't have enough oxygen inside. So I would say 3 to 4, maybe 5 layers at the most is what you want to fill your tin with. So we're going to go right ahead, put that inside of our tin, making sure it's kind of fluffed up a little bit so that it gets some oxygen. We're going to put the lid on, and then we're going to just put this on top of a nice hot part of our fire. So what you're going to start to see is, as that cloth starts to char, a jet of smoke is going to come out of the top hole of our tin right there. And we know that we're going to stop cooking this once that jet of smoke actually stops coming out. So there we go. That's the beginning right there. You see that little jet? So we're going to leave this on the fire. As long as you see smoke pouring out of that top hole, you're going to leave it on the fire. As soon as that smoke stops pouring out, that's the time to take it off. Alright, so now we've seen our smoke it's kind of petered out of that top hole. It's not smoking much anymore, just a tiny little bit. So now we're going to take this off our fire, but we don't want to open the tin immediately. We want to give it time to cool down. Alright, so we want to make sure that we take our tin off the fire and let it cool down before we open it. If we open that lid, the onrush of fresh oxygen can actually cause our char cloth to ignite. So we want to let this cool down first before trying to open it. Our tin has been now resting for about 10 minutes and it's definitely cool to the touch. So we're ready to open this up and see if we've made some good char cloth. Alright, so we see that our cloth is completely charred on all sides. All 4 pieces, nice and charred all the way through. So this is some good, excellent char cloth. The reason that you use thicker material like jeans, you can use a cotton t-shirt or something like that, no problem. But when you use a cotton t-shirt, the material is just so delicate, it just tends to crumble and fall apart too easily on you. So you can also use certain species of fungus to make char. There's a species of fungus that grows on birch trees. It's called chaga or tinder fungus. So you can actually use that fungus to make char as well, but I find that it's extremely hard to find that fungus, and I certainly wouldn't want to rely on trying to find it in a survival situation. This is why I say to do this method, it's much better to pack your char cloth ahead of time. So once you have your char cloth, you can then put your flint and your steel right in the case there and keep everything together with the lid on as a nice, easy to go fire making package. So now that we have all our materials, we can use this char cloth to actually make a fire. Alright, so here we are, ready to make a fire using our char cloth and our flint and steel. So everything is contained in my nice tin. That's the nice thing about this. The same tin that you use to make the char cloth, you can store all your materials in. So I have my flint and steel right in there ready to go. So striking the flint and steel is an art in of itself. It takes practice. It's not something you're going to get the first time. You need to practice ahead of time and really get it down. Remember, we're using a rock that has a sharp side or multiple sharp sides. So you want to find the sharp side, and you're going to take your striker. This is a high carbon steel striker. As you can see, it fits around your 3 to 4 fingers depending on the size of your hand. And what you want to do, you want to, protecting your knuckles, protecting your fingers, you want to hold your striker in your dominant hand. You want to hold the striker in your strong hand, and you're going to hold your rock in your weak hand. So what we want to do with our striker, we want to make a sharp glancing blow that just catches the very edge. So with some practice, we get closer, maybe you see the sparks. So those sparks coming off there are nowhere near as hot as a fire steel. So that's why we need that char cloth. So to catch those sparks, I'm going to take a piece of our char cloth. Don't need a huge amount. I'm going to use less than a quarter of one of those whole discs that I just made. So small piece, about the size of a postage stamp, maybe a slight bit bigger. So we're going to place our char cloth on top of our flint, close to the edge. All right, we don't want it hanging over the edge, but we want it close to the edge. That way, when I strike down with the striker, hopefully one of those sparks will land on our piece of char cloth there. So let me give it a try. Here we see another reason why this is not my favorite. Sometimes it's hard to catch those sparks on the cloth. Oh, there we go. So if you can see that glowing circle right there, you'll know when you catch a spark because it starts to glow. So the more wind or oxygen that you add, the faster that will go up. But as you can see, it kind of hangs out and spreads on its own for a good amount of time. Certainly long enough that you now take this piece and put it into a tinder bundle. All right, the other drawback of the flint and steel method for fire starting is the same drawback as our bow drill. In order to get that piece of lit char cloth to turn into a fire, we need a good, super dry, really well-made tinder bundle. So I'm going to use, once again, a bird's nest, not a real bird's nest, but we call this a bird's nest that we put together of dry grass with some dry Phragmites in the center there. So we're gonna, excuse me. So just like we do with our getting an ember from our bow drill, once we get that char cloth lit into an ember, we're gonna put that in the center of our tinder bundle, cradle it carefully, and blow it into flame. So let's give that a try. All right, so I got my char cloth, got my striker. Go. Got that edge glowing. Let it burn just a little bit till it's good and lit. Gonna put this down into the fluffy center of my tinder bundle. I'm gonna cradle that around and start to add a little oxygen by blowing. So just like our bow drill, the more smoke you see coming out of the bundle, the harder you can blow, the more oxygen you can add. All right. So we lost it. All right. Just goes to show, not the most totally reliable method, even though you may have a lot of practice. I have a good amount of practice doing this, and sometimes you just lose it. Sometimes your material might have a slight bit of dampness, it just doesn't work right. So I'm gonna try it again, start over. All right, gonna readjust and refluff up my tinder bundle. Since it didn't work the first time, something's gotta be wrong. Find the driest, fluffiest part here. Go. If at first you don't succeed, try again.